Your countries are being ruined. The United Nations is funding an assault on Western countries and their borders.
So Mark Carney took to the United Nations yesterday and made clear what Canada's plans are. And that was, advocating and acknowledging the statehood of a specific country in the Middle East. Then Donald Trump stepped up today and said, screw your green policy, screw your immigration policies, you're destroying your countries, and we're about to let you know exactly how it's going. And boy, did that go over like a lead balloon. It was very fascinating to watch and empowering to the people who are seeing the problems firsthand. We'll be touching on that story. Secondly, came out yesterday, Jimmy Kimmel coming back to the air. However, TV broadcast stations are saying, nah, not so fast, the ABC and Disney. We don't want to go down that path. Let's have a discussion first. We are not going to be airing Jimmy Kimmel anytime soon. And that battle that's happening down in the south of the border, it is a fascinating, loaded day. It's going to be a longer episode, and welcome to the Elevate Podcast. I'm your host, Josh. If you get any value from today's episode, take the time to like, share, and subscribe. It helps us to grow, helps to get to new audiences, and helps people see that there's something different than what the mainstream media has to offer. And to those people who hate how I say that, screw you. I love all of you anyways. Let's move on and get to our first story, shall we? So Donald Trump hopped into the United Nations today, which is being hosted in New York City. And he made very clear his perspective, made very clear the United States position on some very key issues, and called out the United Nations and called out different countries in Western democracy, saying, what you're doing is not working. He went on for a good solid 45 minutes when he only had 20 minutes to speak. Donald Trump doing Donald Trump things. However, he was speaking very clearly, and the first thing he went after was green energy. Talking specifically to the hearts of people like, Mark Carney. Saying your green grift doesn't work. It's making all your friends rich, and it's making your country poor. And quite frankly, I'm going to tell it right to your face here on the UN stage.
The United States is now thriving like never before. We're getting rid of the falsely named renewables. By the way, they're a joke. They don't work. They're too expensive. They're not strong enough to fire up the plants that you need to make your country great. The wind doesn't blow. Those big windmills are so pathetic and so bad, so expensive to operate. And they have to be rebuilt all the time, and they start to rust and rot. Most expensive energy ever conceived, and it's actually energy. You're supposed to make money with energy, not lose money. You lose money, the governments have to subsidize. You can't put them out without massive subsidies. And most of them are built in China, and I give China a lot of credit. They build them, but they have very few wind farms. So why is it that they build them and they send them all over the world, but they barely use them? You know what they use? Coal. They use gas. They use almost anything, but they don't like wind. But they sure as hell like selling the windmills. Europe, on the other hand, has a long way to go, with many countries being on the brink of destruction because of the green energy agenda. And I give a lot of credit to Germany. Germany was being led down a very sick path, both on immigration, by the way, and on energy. They were going green, and they were going bankrupt. And the new leadership came in, and they went back to where they were, with fossil fuel and with nuclear, which is good. It's now safe, and you can do it properly. But they went back to where they were, and they opened up a lot of different plants, energy-producing plants, and they're doing well. I give Germany a lot of credit for that.
And that was just a clip of what he went on to say overall. But he really took aim at the issue of the green technology over, in his words, renewables in this case, how they simply do not work. And, I'll be serious. I'll be honest. They do work. The technology does work. It's just the issue that we're seeing is, replacing conventional energy with renewables. It doesn't work. It simply doesn't work. You toast yourself in the process. I think there's aspects of our energy grid that can be subsidized by quote unquote green energy, but to make that your whole energy strategy is so short-sighted. And we're seeing the results in real time. We're seeing it in Europe. We're seeing it here in Canada, where as soon as we cut the knees off of our conventional energy sectors, all of a sudden, people are struggling to make money. You know, we have countries like the US who are taking advantage of our politicians' poor decisions around energy. And we have days where, yeah, windmills just stop running because there's no wind. Solar panels, not as efficient. And I do believe there's a world, and I don't want to be this complete naysayer on no green energy whatsoever. I do think there is a place for it in society. I 100% do. But to the degree that the left keeps pushing it, not even close. People trying to essentially replace their whole energy systems with renewables is absolutely insane. And we saw he called it out here, Germany put themselves in that whole spot with Russia. They said, we're going to go full green energy, but they still needed conventional energy to actually run. So they had to buy energy from Russia, a dictatorship, because they kneecapped themselves in the process. It was a terrible, terrible idea. And Canada's on the same wavelength. And that's why I love Donald Trump stepping up and saying this, because we know the likes of Mark Carney are in audience. The likes of Mark Carney, who's been pushing green technology because his friends get rich. He's pushing the technology because he is himself going to be getting money from it. He even said it himself during a conference. He admitted it. We push these new green fuel regulations, which allows us to sell specific gasoline to these airlines, and we end up making money in the process. We're close to what his words were. The thing is, I loved what Donald Trump said here, and I loved what he followed this up with when it came to immigration. And with that, I'll say this. We are in a technology age. We are in an age where your information is being sold at a premium. You might sign up for a newsletter, sign up for a loyalty card. The next thing you know, you're getting spam calls and you're also getting spam emails, and people just won't leave you alone. And quite frankly, if you're like me, you're one of those types who's just resigned and hoping and praying nothing bad happens in the long run. Then a service called Incogni came across my desk. A service that scours the internet for your information and puts requests in to make sure that your information is removed from these third-party services who are selling your information at a premium without your discretion. As I've said, there's times I've signed up for newsletters, signed up for loyalty programs, and all of a sudden I'm getting phone calls from numbers I otherwise don't know anything about. Or I'm getting emails, again, from addresses I know nothing of and didn't ask for at any point in time. Or even worse, you hear of a big data breach of a service you don't even use, and somehow you find out your information was leaked in it. And that's where Incogni comes in clutch. You simply log in, put your information in, and then they start looking across the internet of where your information has been used, sold, or being traded with third-party partners. I've only been using it for the past week, and they found 39 instances already of services who are using my information and selling it at a premium or trading it at a premium. In this case, they found 39. They've resolved 26 of them already, and they're still working on the other 13 to get them removed immediately. And you can see my whole activity log right here. And as a bonus, get an extra level of protection with Incogni's custom removals feature in the Unlimited plan and Family Unlimited plan. You can point to any search site or other website where your personal information is visible, and one of their privacy agents will take care of the rest for you. If you want to keep your internet ID safe online, then download Incogni today. Take your personal data back with Incogni. Use code ELEVATE at incogni.com/elevate, and that's incogni.com/elevate, and you can get 60% off their annual plan today. And that is, again, incogni.com/elevate. Use code ELEVATE at checkout to get 60% off their annual plan. Now let's get into our next story.
The UN not solving the problems it should too often. It's actually creating new problems for us to solve. The best example is the number one political issue of our time, the crisis of uncontrolled migration. It's uncontrolled. Your countries are being ruined. The United Nations is funding an assault on Western countries and their borders. In 2024, the UN budgeted $372 million in cash assistance to support an estimated 624,000 migrants journeying into the United States. Think of that. The UN is supporting people that are illegally coming into the United States, and then we have to get them out. The UN also provided food, shelter, transportation, and debit cards to illegal aliens. Can you believe that? On the way to infiltrate our southern border. Millions of people came through that southern border. Just a year ago, millions and millions of people were pouring in, 25 million altogether over the 4 years. of the incompetent Biden administration. And now we have it stopped, totally stopped. In fact, they're not even coming anymore because they know they can't get through. But what took place is totally unacceptable. The UN is supposed to stop invasions, not create them and not finance them. In the United States, we reject the idea that mass numbers of people from foreign lands can be permitted to travel halfway around the world, trample our borders, violate our sovereignty, cause unmitigated crime, and deplete our social safety net.
Again, this is simply a small sliver percentage of the things he actually said during this address. But he definitely didn't mince words in how he feels about the United Nations. He even said it here. They are funding an assault on Western nations and their sovereign borders. He gave words to what we are seeing in real time. Because what we're feeling in Canada is no different than what they're feeling in the UK, no different than what they're feeling in Australia, no different than what they're feeling in other Western nations. And this is really the issue and what the problem is, right? Because what we're told, especially by the left, is stop whining so much about your country. You don't like Canada? Then move. Because all these issues are happening in every other country around the world. And then you're just like, do you want to have that conversation now? Do you want to have that conversation now? Of course it's happening in every other country, especially in Western nations around the world, because it's a coordinated effort. Why I think all these countries came out at the same time yesterday to recognize that specific country in the Middle East yesterday. France came out today at the UN to talk about it. Carney went to talk to the UN yesterday to talk about it. All at the same time. Even Carney so much as hinting at the idea of putting troops in that specific country to maintain peace. Putting our sons and our daughters on the ground in that place in the Middle East to maintain peace. It's absolutely psychotic. And as I was saying, we're seeing this uncontrolled immigration in our country, and it's not unique to us. It's happening in other Western nations, as we've been seeing. It's a complete and utter coordinated effort to overwhelm these countries in order to disperse manufacturing, to disperse their power, and be able to help these rich multinational companies to not have to worry and operate with borders, to move manufacturing and production to anywhere in the globe they see fit so that they can get the cheapest labor possible and make the most amount of money they can. We're seeing it in Canada, where they've overrun us with low-skilled labor to drive down wages and take advantage of Canadians. It's happening in the UK, it's happening in Australia, and it's happening in these other Western nations. It's a complete coordinated effort facilitated by organizations like the United Nations to drive this agenda to make everyone poor so these multinational corporations can get rich and wealthy. And that's a hard truth to accept for some, but it's what we are currently seeing in real time. And quite frankly, I'm going to do a breakdown on that on a different date, have a more full episode to show you the trends that we are seeing across the globe at the moment. Conversations that are being had, things that have been mentioned at conferences, politicians' decisions in different countries is what we're currently seeing. But with that, we switch gears to news that broke yesterday. Jimmy Kimmel Live set to return Tuesday after suspension. The suspension lasted, all of 10 days? Something like that? Maybe if that. Maybe a week. ABC will reinstate Jimmy Kimmel's late night show, officials with the network said Monday, ending a suspension brought on by criticism over his comments following the assassination of conservative activist Charlie Kirk. We have spent the last days having thoughtful conversations with Jimmy, and after those conversations, we reached the decision to return the show on Tuesday, said a statement from the Walt Disney Company, which owns ABC. Kimmel said in a recent monologue that many in MAGA land are working very hard to capitalize on the murder of Charlie Kirk, and that the MAGA gang was desperately trying to characterize this kid who murdered Charlie Kirk as anything other than one of them. Kimmel has hosted Jimmy Kimmel Live, yada. That's kind of, we involved in the story. You know what's going on, what's happening. Well, now they're bringing him back. And people on the left are cheering this on, saying, look, our protests work. We told them what's up. We will not let far-right fascism get in the way of this beautiful country. That's what they're crying about. Canadian lefties are talking about it. The left in the US States are obviously super pumped about it. And they're just like, look, we are not going to let fascism win. And I do find it really odd. I know this point has been made ad nauseum at this point, but I'll make it again. It is weird. It is weird that people got way more upset about Jimmy Kimmel being preempted than the death of Charlie Kirk. It was wild. Wild to watch, wild to see. But this is what the fascinating thing was, all the politics behind the scenes, because we saw the likes of St. Clair, who is a broadcast company that owns a handful of ABC stations, said, guess what? We're not following this. We are not returning Jimmy Kimmel back to air unless he actually apologizes to the Kirk family. They said we're not returning them. And again, St. Clair owns something like 12 or 13% of the ABC stations in the United States, so it's not a huge move, but it is something to see some confrontation happening over this, and they want to see something a little more substantial than just throwing them back on because a boycott took place. And that's the question a lot of people are having, was how did this happen? Like, what was going on? Because we saw the stats, we saw everything that came out. Jimmy Kimmel's doing terrible numbers. He's not making any money. He's making $15 million himself, not on top of how much the production costs, the work around him costs, the people who are helping support the show cost. None of that included. The show is doing what, $129,000 in the key demo in a monthly basis. Like, he's doing terrible. So a boycott threatening the station, they're not losing a whole lot of money on this. It's not really much of a threat. So what is going on? People really are wondering what's happening. What was the change of heart? I don't think they were so super gung-ho about trying to get Jimmy Kimmel back on air because his show stinks. That's just the reality. Then you started hearing stories and murmurings across the country of what was happening on the ground and the violent left-wing rhetoric. National Review reported this. It says, suspect in ABC station shooting politically motivated, left note warning Trump officials that they're next. Prosecutors believe the suspect who allegedly opened fire on the ABC 10 station in Sacramento on Friday was politically motivated. Sacramento County District Attorney Thean Ho told National Review, explaining that a search of the suspect's vehicle yielded a note that criticized the members of the Trump administration and appeared to reference the recent assassination of Charlie Kirk. This is one story of many where ABC stations across the states were receiving death threats from the left. And then we had someone actually go up and shoot up one of these TV stations. So I'll tell you this much. I have a feeling the likes of the top brass at Disney, Bob Iger, said, you know what, we're losing money, Jimmy Kimmel, let's just kind of pause this. It's getting really, the rhetoric is really through the roof right now. We don't need this. This is not helpful. Let's chill out on this for a bit. And then he gets reports saying, yeah, but the problem is all of our infrastructure is being attacked right now. What do you mean? Well, now we have to increase security because this happened. We really should think about bringing them back because your life is at risk. And, the top brass at Disney's like, what do you mean life's at risk? One's like, well, don't forget, they just killed Charlie Kirk. So what do you think you're going to do? What do you think is going to happen to you? Look how upset they are thinking fascism's winning. They will literally shoot up TV stations. Bob Iger, I'd be careful. Then boom, phone call to Jimmy Kimmel. All right, what's it going to take to bring you back? This had nothing to do with boycotts, losing money, none of this. Actually, if anything, preempting Jimmy Kimmel in the first place was actually probably better for their profits. It was probably making them more money. Keeping the show going is actually losing them more money. From my perspective, and from what I'm seeing, and what the news is saying, likely they bent the knee because of the violence from the oh-so-tolerant left wing of the spectrum. We even saw it with other ABC stations around Charlie Kirk's memorial, where we found out that ABC stations were being threatened for simply airing the memorial. So St. Clair took a step back and said, okay, we'll just show it on our YouTube channel. Who's fighting fascism, my friends? Love to hear who it is. Because we have the likes of, we covered this news publication last week based out of Montreal here in Canada. Cult Montreal pushed this article out, saying the incredible hypocrisy of Charlie Kirk's fans and defenders celebrating censorship. In an editorial on September 11th, I decided to call Charlie Kirk exactly what he was, a terrible person who profited off of hatred. Cult Montreal had then received a considerable amount of hate mail, as well as hundreds of death threats, and we were hardly the only ones. It proved a point. Kirk's fans and defenders are as awful as he was. This is the type of gasoline they want to keep throwing on this fire. These people are fundamentally psychotic and insane. Standing so tall in this editorial, September 11th, I posted this thing about Charlie Kirk being the worst person ever. A day after he got assassinated. We were shocked at the hate mail that we got. It was terrifying. And death threats, I have a hard time believing. Show the proof. I'm sure there's a handful of crazies, out there. But I don't think it's as nearly as much as they think it was. Or they're portraying as it was. That's just what they do. Hyperbole is what they do best. This disgusting article on so many levels. Because again, the same old BS was being thrown off in this article. Charlie Kirk was a homophobic, transphobic, xenophobic, and racist. He wasn't a free speech warrior. He was a crappy person with a megaphone whose hatred appeals to conservatives. It's the same old BS. Time and time and time again. I don't know why we got hatred. Why they hate us so much? I don't know. We just witnessed in real time a man get assassinated with blood everywhere. And your first thought is to publish that the next day and have the audacity to be shocked that people would be upset. People are heartless, cruel, and absolutely disgusting. And you base these accusations on weak footing at best. At best. So yeah, the likes of Jimmy Kimmel hopping on a Monday night, espousing lies about the case, and knowingly espousing lies about the case. Yeah, he deserved what he got. There's no censorship here, my friends. Just you guys being utterly thoughtless, simply put. But that's it for me. Have yourselves a good one. I'm out.